It's a little bit of a shock to me that he hasn't been called up to the U.S. men's national team, given it feels like he wants that opportunity, and I think he deserves it given his playing time. But I think this is one that Mexico says, hey, we can get him in our team. We can bring him to Club America because he is that quality player on the ball. He can play in tight spaces. He has a good touch, good first touch. I think he's underrated in the way that Americans see him.
Let's talk PSV. And Chuck, I'm going to come to you first because they've got some ballers. Malik Tillman in particular has been fantastic. Probably the highest rated player for me, most consistent player for PSV this season. They're taking on AZ Alkmaar to come back into 2025 after their winter break. And Ricardo Pepi, it's his birthday today, so happy birthday to El Train. And what's interesting is when I dug through some of these stats, we'll start with Ricardo Pepi, actually, as our resident number 9. I'm going to throw him, and then we'll talk Malik Tillman. But in 636 minutes in the league in the Eredivisie, Ricardo Pepi has scored 10 goals and had 2 assists. That's less than half the minutes that Tillman has. I know they don't play the same position, so it's a little bit different. But that rate is pretty ridiculous. And even Luke de Jong, 7 goals and 4 assists for him, but he's played 300 more minutes than Ricardo Pepi as well. What are your thoughts on PSV overall and Ricardo Pepi's chances to unseat Luke de Jong? And do you think he'll do it by the end of the season officially?
You know what? I think he will be the starting striker for PSV the following season. Mm-hmm. I think he's done enough to make the manager, Peter Bosz, understand how good he is. And when he capitalizes on the minutes that he's given, that Luke de Jong feels the pressure. Luke de Jong is not getting any younger. That transformation happens within a season where you see a young player given his opportunities start to warrant more minutes versus someone that you've trusted and believed in who has done it for a number of years but is now going the opposite way. And then you have to make that decision of, okay, for the future, we're going to go with Ricardo Pepi. Otherwise, he still gets an A for me because he's put himself in the shop window for the summer. So it's either PSV makes that decision of we got somebody who's understands our system, who's lighting up the league and is ready for that next step, or you know what, we're still going to stick with Luke de Jong and we're going to sell him because he is a valuable asset. So I think knowing how well he's done and Ernie Stewart, that he's the striker for the future. It just feels like that's the path that they're going to go. And I think Ricardo Pepi will be fortunate that he's in a situation where he's comfortable. He knows the players, he knows the system, he knows the way that his teammates kind of move around him, the tendencies of his teammates. That makes a big difference for him to continue to produce.
Now, Chuck, you weren't here for our big predictions episode, but Big Tones said there's going to be a surprise January move for Ricardo Pepi. Big Tones, you gonna still stay on that, or and if so, where to? Yeah. And if not, what have you changed your prediction to?
No. I mean, we were making bold predictions. That's the bold prediction I came up with. But I have seen some word that it looks like they may offer him a new contract. Now, sometimes some of those new contracts they put buyout clauses in there, right? That maybe they didn't have before because the player has gotten to a different level, but. I did say in that same episode, I would love for Ricardo Pepi, like Chuck said, to be the starting forward at PSV to win the job, because I still think that would be the best position for him to be in. Sorry, I got some alarm going off that I don't know about.
Popular Big Tones.
Yeah. So my prediction was that he would go to a bigger club. I was hoping somewhere in the Bundesliga or somewhere in Serie A. That would have been, I don't know if it's a specific team, but I think if he stays at PSV and they offer him a new contract because they think, as Charlie said, he's becoming that guy now and taking over. I think Luke de Jong's like 34 or 35 now. That would be a great scenario for Ricardo Pepi.
Yeah, it's worth noting, just to put it out there, that the majority of Ricardo Pepi starts do seem to come against the lower bottom half teams in the Eredivisie. That probably needs to be part of the conversation. But it's clear that he's effective when he comes on the field and he's got great energy. And so we'll see if he can continue to parlay that. I mean, he's at 10 goals. Can he get to 20? That would be pretty impressive if he could do that just in the Eredivisie alone. Maybe he can chip in as well in European competition. Okay, 2 other players. I mentioned Malik Tillman. Can he keep it up, Chuck? That's one. The second thing is Richy Ledezma, who's been playing a little bit of a hybrid right back, but he's getting minutes. He actually has more league minutes than Ricardo Pepi does. which I thought was a bit of a surprise when I looked that up, and like, holy crap, over 100 more minutes than Ricardo Pepi. Obviously, not the same positions, and when you have a right back, you're usually going to keep him in the whole game, whereas Ricardo Pepi kind of in and out and more of a super sub. Now Ledezma did get named in the team of the month, Eredivisie team of the month in December, and you have Club America that actually, I guess, put a bid in for Richy Ledezma as well. So there's a little bit of action around another American that we maybe don't talk about as much with PSV. So why don't you start with Ledezma and then give me some Tillman talk, Chuck, because I want to know if you think he can keep it up, because he's been on fire this first half of the season.
Well, one, I think on Ledezma, he's a quality player. I mean, he is naturally a midfielder, and he was brought there to be in that midfield and the midfield three, and he pulled his did his ACL. So it took him some time to get back, and they figured out a spot to play him at the right so he could still come into the midfield, and he gets involved when they have possession. So he, it's a little bit of a shock to me that he hasn't been called up to the U.S. men's national team, given it feels like he wants that opportunity, and I think he deserves it given his playing time. But I think this is one that Mexico says, hey, we can get him in our team. We can bring him to Club America because he is that quality player on the ball. He can play in tight spaces. He has a good touch, good first touch. I think he's underrated in the way that Americans see him. But he is a good player. So I'm happy with his progress and that he's getting back to full fitness, after putting his injuries behind him. And then for Tillman, I see him continuing to thrive because, the way Ernie Stewart talks about him, I had a conversation with Ernie. He said, you just have to understand how he is and you'll get the most out of him. You just understand him. You build that trust and you allow him to be free, but he can do the most amazing things with the ball at his feet. So there's a reason why he was at Bayern Munich. The kid is gifted. And it's just pulling that out and having him be more of a presence and more consistent. But I do see him continuing to build on what he did so far. So Big Tones, this is always the big question. And you notice this a lot when you're a veteran and you've played for a long time. So for you, obviously, it's with the national team and at the club level. But you have a young prospect or someone that's kind of coming into their own. And the big question, especially from the attacking side of the ball, is now that people figured them out and know how to slow them down, right, and are doing more sophisticated scouting on how to not only limit this player on the ball and their own particular individual influence, but also their impact on the team overall. Like essentially, how is PSV getting Tillman the ball in those pockets of space? Can they minimize that action? So I'm really curious, and I want to get your thoughts on this too. Knowing that I'm sure the other teams in the Eredivisie are now scouting Tillman, and they already knew he was aware of him. He's been playing really well. But when you start to maybe double team him in a different way, can he still have that same impact? I'm very curious to see how he responds to that.
Yeah, look, he's on a team with PSV. When they're playing in the league, they get the ball the whole game. I mean, they're constantly attacking, they're clearly, right? You look at where they are in the standings. So it's a little bit different. We see a little bit less when you get to Champions League, but he gets to Champions League and still scores goals, right? I think if we're looking at, if we were going to grade him, you almost got to give him 2 grades, right? Like you got to give him an A+ with PSV and what he's done, because they're talking at one point in somewhere in the beginning of December, end of November, beginning of December, about him being the best player in the league, right? So I think you look at his grade there, and it's got to be like an A+. And then you look at the national team, and how many times have we said we're just waiting for the club form? Like we're waiting for the club form to become national team form, and then he hasn't been poor. I mean, we go the last camp, he played a little bit deeper. Who'd he come in for? Johnny, right? When Johnny got hurt in that game,
right? In Jamaica.
And yeah, and he actually played well. So do you give him a C? Do you average it out? I don't know. But, I mean, I think you almost have to look at him as 2 different grades. Ledezma, I'm interested in him because when I had him in the youth national team was where he was normally playing, and that was in the midfield, kind of as an 8, sometimes as a 6, sometimes as a double pivot, but in the midfield, in the middle of the field. This move to right back has been good for him. It's given him a new lease on life when you talk about being versatile, and given him minutes that he probably wouldn't have had. Where would he fit in with the national team? That would be my question. Like, does he fit? Is he better than Joe Scally? Is he better than, we look at Dest as a right back who's a little bit better. When Des comes back to his own team, is Ledezma even going to play a minute, right? Like, we got to look at that too, which seems like it's going to happen in January. I'm just interested to see his development and where it goes from there. But you're talking about all of these guys are all still young players, right? They're all just really young. And I'm the first one to say I never give up on young players, never.